This is HOA clapback. One icy step, and she tried to ruin my week. You will clear that curb cut now, or you will be in a hearing this week. That is what Janice Foster screamed at me while I stood on my own driveway at 6 in the morning, breath fogging the air, headlamp strapped to my forehead because the sun was not even up yet. She was holding a portable thermal printer like it was a weapon, and she had a snow pusher propped against the curb like she owned the sidewalk. My sidewalk had ice. She yelled that she would file a violation and call the HOA vendor. I am a medical device sales rep, always driving and meeting clients, and I had a presentation in Dallas in 3 hours. I did not have time for this. The storm had hit Grapevine, Texas 2 days earlier. Mesa Verde Village Association, where I live, turned into a war zone overnight. The plows came through and shoved all the street snow onto everyone's curbs, burying mailboxes and cracking concrete. My curb cut, the little ramp where the sidewalk dips for the driveway, ended up buried under a frozen ridge of compacted slush. I had chipped at it the night before with a shovel until my shoulders burned, but by morning it had refrozen into a slick, uneven mess. Janice showed up because someone, probably her, had decided that was a code violation. She is the Design Review Board Vice Chair. That means she blocks approvals out of spite, and she has been doing it for years. I have lived here 8 months. She hated me from day one because I pushed back when she tried to deny my fence stain color. The neighborhood treats residents like suspects during winter, and Janice leads the charge. She pointed the thermal printer at me. "Smile. I am documenting this for the file." That was her catchphrase. She said it every time she wanted to make you feel small. The printer whirred and spat out a tiny slip of paper. She waved it. "Your paperwork is cute, mine has a letterhead." I wanted to grab that printer and throw it into a snowbank, but I kept my hands at my sides. I told her the plow did the damage. I told her I cleared what I could. She cut me off. The rules say sidewalks and curb cuts must be maintained within 24 hours of snow cessation. Cessation. She used that word like it was a courtroom. I pointed out that the plow came through yesterday afternoon, so I still had hours. She ignored that and said the HOA vendor was on speed dial, and if I did not comply, they would tow my car for obstructing snow removal operations. My car was in my driveway, on my property. I asked how that was obstructing anything. She said the vendor has authority to determine access compliance. I had no idea what that meant. She walked closer, and I could see the edge of a red stamped envelope sticking out of her coat pocket. Final notice. I had gotten one of those every time it snowed. 3 storms this season, 3 envelopes. Each one claimed a different violation. Snow piled too close to the fence line. Driveway not cleared to the property line. Ice on the walkway creating a slip hazard. I wrote down every word, because later I planned to read them back to her. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. She saw me typing and her face went tight. She told me recording was not allowed without HOA consent. I said I was taking notes, not recording. She snapped that it was the same thing and walked back to her car, a white sedan with the association decal on the door. Before she left, she said the tow company was already in the neighborhood and would not leave without a decision. That was the pressure. That was the clock. I went inside and called the management company. The office was not open yet. I left a voicemail. Then I called my neighbor, Marcus, who sits on the landscaping committee and knows the backstory. He has watched Janice operate for 5 years. He told me she does this every winter. She files complaint log entries that are obviously written in her own voice, full of exaggerated language and selective enforcement. Last year, she tried to fine someone for leaving a snow shovel leaning against their garage. The rule she cited did not exist. Marcus said I needed to document everything: photos, timestamps, witness statements. He offered to come over and look at the curb cut himself. I told him to wait until after work. I had to get to Dallas. My job is on the line because the HOA chaos keeps interrupting my work and sleep. I have missed calls, rescheduled demos, and shown up to client meetings looking like I just crawled out of a bunker. My boss already asked if everything was okay at home. I lied and said yes. I grabbed my laptop bag and headed out. The snowblower was still sitting near my garage door where I left it the night before. It is a small electric model, bright orange, and I had used it to clear the driveway. Janice called it visible storage. The HOA rules say tools and equipment must be stored out of sight unless in active use. I planned to roll it into the garage after my meeting, but she caught me before I could. That snowblower became the center of her next attack. By the time I got back from Dallas that evening, there was a new red stamped envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a notice claiming the snowblower constituted a violation of outdoor storage bylaws and that I had 72 hours to remove it or face a $50 daily fine. The notice also said my amenities access, the neighborhood pool and fitness center, and the front gate code would be suspended pending compliance. Amenities lockouts used as punishment and leverage. That is the HOA method here. I pulled the snowblower into the garage immediately and took a photo with a timestamp. Then I went back outside and photographed the curb cut. The ice ridge was still there, but I had chipped away at it enough that the sidewalk was passable. A plow marker stake was leaning sideways in a snowbank near the curb, half buried. That stake became a recurring detail. Every time I looked outside, it was there, crooked and accusing. Marcus came over after dinner. He walked the property line with me, checking the placement of the snow piles. He pointed out that the plow had shoved snow onto my grass and damaged the edge of my driveway. The asphalt had a fresh crack running along the curb. He said the HOA was responsible for plow damage, not the homeowner. I asked how to prove that. He said I needed a city inspector to confirm the cause. A city inspector confirming what the HOA cannot enforce. That was the first hint of the payback vector. The next morning, I called the City Public Works Department. They said they could send someone out within a week. I explained the HOA was threatening fines and a tow. The clerk sighed and said they would try to move it up. Then I called a lawyer, just to ask about the amenities lockout. The attorney said that was legal gray area. HOAs can restrict access for unpaid dues, but using it as immediate punishment for alleged violations might be considered retaliatory. He said I should request a hearing and document the lockout if it happened. That same afternoon, Janice showed up again. This time she had a clipboard and a tape measure. She walked the length of my driveway, measuring the snow pile setback from the fence. She did not knock. She did not ask permission. She just started measuring. I watched from the window, phone in hand, recording video through the glass. She knelt down and took a photo of the plow marker stake, then moved to the curb and took another photo of the ice ridge. Her movements were deliberate, performative. She wanted me to see her doing this. I went outside. I asked what she was doing. She stood up and smiled. Compliance inspection. I told her she needed to notify residents before entering the property. She said the bylaws allow board members to inspect common elements in adjacent areas for safety. I said my driveway is not a common element. She ignored that and pointed at the snow pile near my fence. She said it was within 3 feet of the property line and that violated setback requirements. I asked to see that rule in writing. She said it was in the winter addendum, adopted last month. I had never seen a winter addendum. I asked for a copy. She said it was posted on the resident portal. I told her I never got access to the portal. She said that was my problem, not hers. Then she walked to the mailbox cluster at the end of the block and taped a notice to the side. I followed her. The notice was printed on association letterhead and said all residents must clear snow within 12 hours or face immediate vendor towing. It was dated today. She had just made up the timeline. 3 neighbors were outside shoveling. They stopped and watched. One of them, an older man named Phil, asked Janice if the 12-hour rule was new. She said it had always been policy. Phil shook his head and said he had lived here 9 years and never heard of it. Janice told him to check the portal. Phil said the portal has been down since November. Janice walked back to her car without responding. That night, I tried to log into the resident portal. The site loaded, but my credentials did not work. I reset my password twice. Still locked out. I sent an email to the management company asking for access and for a copy of the winter addendum. No response. I sent a second email the next morning. Still nothing. I started to realize the lockout was intentional. A gate system vendor report would later prove the lockout was intentional configuration, but I did not know that yet. 2 days later, I got another red stamped envelope. This one claimed I had failed to comply with the snow removal timeline and that a lien packet was being prepared. The packet included a bogus ledger with mystery line items, administrative processing fee, compliance inspection fee, vendor coordination fee, expedited notice fee. The total was $640. I had 7 days to pay or the association would file a lien against my property. I called the lawyer again. He said the fees looked like fabricated charges and that I should request an itemized breakdown at a hearing. He drafted a letter for me. I printed it, signed it, and hand-delivered it to the management company office. The receptionist accepted it and said someone would follow up. A week passed. No follow-up. I sent a certified letter. Then I got a call from a man who identified himself as the tow operator. He said he was standing in my neighborhood and needed to know if I wanted my car moved or not. I asked why he would move my car. He said the association had authorized a tow for obstruction. I told him my car was in my driveway and not obstructing anything. He paused. He said he was just doing his job and that if I had a dispute, I should take it up with the board. Then he said he was not leaving without a decision. I ran outside. The tow truck was parked at the curb. The operator, a middle-aged guy in a heavy jacket, was standing near my mailbox with his phone out. He looked uncomfortable. I walked up and introduced myself. I asked who authorized the tow. He showed me a work order on his phone. It listed my address and said the vehicle was obstructing emergency snow removal access. I pointed at my car, parked neatly in my driveway, and asked how that was obstructing anything. He shrugged and said he did not write the order. Janice pulled up in her white sedan. She got out and walked toward us, holding her portable thermal printer again. Smile, I am documenting this for the file. She took a photo of my car, then turned to the tow operator and told him to proceed. He hesitated. He asked if the homeowner was present in disputing the order. She said it did not matter. He looked at me, then at her, then back at me. He said he needed clear authorization before towing a vehicle from private property. Janice snapped that the work order was clear authorization. He said he needed it in writing from the management company, not the board. Janice called the management company on speaker. A woman answered and confirmed that a tow had been authorized for my address. The tow operator asked for the specific violation. The woman on the phone said obstruction of access. He asked what access was being obstructed. There was a pause. The woman said she would have to check the file and call back. Janice hung up. She told the operator to wait. He said he would give it 10 minutes. If no one called back with clear justification, he was leaving. I used those 10 minutes. I pulled up the photos I had taken of the curb cut, the driveway, the snow piles, and the plow marker stake. I showed them to the operator. I explained that the plow had caused the damage and that I had cleared everything required. He nodded. He said it looked like a property dispute, not an obstruction issue. Janice stepped closer and said the board had final say on compliance. The operator said the board did not have final say on what constitutes obstruction under Texas law. That was the first crack in her armor. The management company never called back. After 12 minutes, the operator got in his truck and left. Janice stood there, glaring at me. She said this was not over. She said the board would hold a hearing and that I would be fined for non-compliance and obstruction of association business. I asked what I was obstructing. She did not answer. She got in her car and drove off. The tow operator had been the witness I needed. He stood back and listened carefully, and his refusal to proceed without proper authorization became part of my evidence trail. That evening, Marcus called. He said the board had scheduled an emergency meeting for the following week. The agenda included my case. He said Janice had submitted a formal complaint packet and that the board president was planning to vote on fines and a lien. He also said he had heard rumors that other residents were being targeted the same way. 3 families on the north side of the neighborhood had received similar red-stamped envelopes. All of them involved snow removal or driveway storage violations. All of them had been filed by Janice. If you are enjoying this story, please hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA drama and neighborhood chaos. I started digging. I went door to door and talked to the other targeted residents. One woman, Laura, showed me her notice. It claimed her trash cans were visible from the street during snow removal operations and that she owed $200 in fines. The rules cited did not match anything in the bylaws. Another neighbor, David, had been fined for parking his truck in his driveway because it allegedly blocked the plow route. His driveway is a single car width, and the plow never comes within 10 feet of it. Every case had the same pattern: vague rules, inflated fees, and red-stamped envelopes. Laura told me something useful. She said her doorbell camera had caught Janice walking through her backyard at night 2 weeks earlier, taking photos of her trash area. Laura had saved the footage. That was the first hint of the trump card. A neighbor's doorbell video showing Karen trespassing at night near my property. I asked if she still had it. She said yes. I asked if I could get a copy. She said absolutely. I spent the next 3 days gathering everything I could. I pulled my own doorbell footage and found Janice walking along the side of my house one morning, measuring the snow pile setback without permission. I found another clip of her standing at the mailbox cluster, taping up notices while no one was around. I requested copies of the winter addendum from the management company. They ignored the request. I filed a formal records request under Texas HOA law. That forced a response. They sent me a PDF 2 days before the hearing. The winter addendum did not include half the rules Janice had been citing. The 12-hour timeline was not there. The 3-foot setback was not there. The visible storage restriction for snowblowers was not there. I made copies of everything. I organized it into a binder with tabs, photos, emails, notices, vendor interactions, witness statements, and doorbell footage stills. Marcus helped me draft a response packet. We included the city inspector's preliminary report, which confirmed that the curb damage was caused by the plow and that the HOA was responsible. We included the tow operator's statement, which I had asked him to write up and he agreed. We included the records request response showing the missing rules. And we included the doorbell footage stills showing Janice trespassing. The hearing was scheduled for 7 in the evening at the association clubhouse. I showed up 15 minutes early. Marcus came with me. The board president, a man named Ron, was already there, along with 2 other board members. Janice arrived last, carrying a leather portfolio and her portable thermal printer. She sat up at the head of the table like she was running the meeting. Ron called the meeting to order and asked me to present my case. I walked through the timeline. I explained the storm, the plow damage, the repeated notices, the fake rules, the tow threat, and the bogus lien packet. I showed the photos. I showed the emails. I showed the winter addendum with the missing rules highlighted. Ron looked uncomfortable. One of the other board members, a woman named Karen. Wait, her name was actually Karen, but she was not the antagonist, so I will just call her board member 2. Asked Janice if she had verified the rules before filing the complaints. Janice said the rules were common practice and did not need to be in writing. That was when I pulled out the doorbell footage. I played the clip on my laptop. It showed Janice walking through Laura's backyard at night, shining a flashlight on the trash area and taking photos with her phone. Then I played my own footage, showing her measuring my property without permission. Ron asked Janice if she had obtained consent before entering private property. She said the board had inspection authority. Ron said the board could inspect common areas, not private backyards. Janice said it was all part of compliance enforcement. Marcus spoke up. He pointed out that Janice had filed 6 violation complaints in the past 4 weeks, all targeting residents who had previously disagreed with her on design review decisions. He said it looked like selective enforcement. Board member 2 asked if anyone had checked Janice's own property for compliance. Ron said that was not relevant. Marcus said it was absolutely relevant. He pulled out his phone and showed a photo he had taken that morning. It showed Janice's driveway. Her snowblower, identical to mine, was sitting uncovered near her garage door. Visible storage. The room went silent. Janice said the photo was taken out of context. Marcus said it was taken at 8 in the morning, same day, and that the snowblower had been there for 3 days. He had time-stamped photos to prove it. Ron asked Janice if she had stored her snowblower outside. She said it was temporarily placed there during active use. Marcus said mine was also temporarily placed during active use, and I had moved it within hours. Janice had left hers out for days. That was the funny karma beat. Karen tries to flex authority and the policy says she cannot. Ron called for a recess. The board members went into a side room. Marcus and I waited. Janice sat at the table, staring at her phone. After 20 minutes, Ron came back. He said the board had reviewed the evidence and determined that the complaints filed against me were not supported by the bylaws. The fines would be reversed. The lien packet would be withdrawn. He also said the board would be conducting an internal review of the complaint process, and that all future violations would require management company verification before being filed. That was not enough. I stood up and said I wanted a formal apology and a written statement clearing my record. I also said I wanted the gate access lockout reversed immediately. Ron said he would handle it. I said I wanted it handled tonight. He nodded. Then I said I had one more thing. I pulled out the last piece of evidence, the one I had been holding back. I had emailed Laura's doorbell footage to every homeowner in the association earlier that day, right before the meeting. The email included a summary of Janice's selective enforcement, her trespassing, her fake rules, and her own storage violations. I deployed the trump card so Karen walked into an ambush. Ron's phone buzzed. Then board member 2's phone buzzed. Then Janice's phone buzzed. They all checked their screens. Janice's face went white. She stood up and said I had no right to distribute private correspondence. I said it was not private correspondence. It was evidence of HOA misconduct, and every homeowner had a right to know. Ron asked if I had sent it to the entire association. I said yes. He asked how many people. I said 234 households. Janice tried to argue that the footage was inadmissible because it was taken without her knowledge. I pointed out that doorbell cameras are legal in Texas and that she was on someone else's property without permission. Marcus added that Texas is a one-party consent state for recordings, and the property owner had consented. Janice said the board would take action against me for defamation. I said truth is an absolute defense and that everything in the email was documented. Ron ended the meeting. He said the board would reconvene in 2 weeks to discuss policy reforms. He also said Janice would be stepping down from the design review board pending the internal review. Janice did not say anything. She packed up her portfolio and left. I watched her walk to her car, her breath fogging in the cold air, the plow marker stake still leaning sideways in a snowbank near the street. The next week, the management company sent me a formal letter. It confirmed that all fines and fees had been reversed, that my gate access had been restored, and that my record was clear. It also included an apology for the inconvenience. The letter was signed by the property manager, not Ron. I kept it in the binder. 2 weeks later, the board held a public meeting to discuss the internal review findings. The management company had conducted an audit of all complaint filings from the past year. They found that Janice had filed 42 complaints, 38 of which were not supported by the bylaws. 15 of those complaints had resulted in fines that were later reversed after residents requested hearings. The audit also found that the gate system had been intentionally configured to lock out specific residents, including me, without due process. A gate system vendor report proved the lockout was intentional configuration. The management company disciplined the rep who enabled it. The property manager was placed on probation and required to undergo compliance training. Janice was removed from the design review board entirely. The board also adopted a new winter policy with clear timelines, neutral proof standards, and a real appeal process. Residents could no longer be fined without photographic evidence in a management company review. Lockouts were banned except for unpaid dues exceeding 90 days. But I was not done. The map had shown something else. The 3-foot setback rule Janice kept citing, the one that was not in the winter addendum, turned out to apply only to corner lots. My lot was mid-block. The rule did not apply to my property, and Janice knew it. The audit found emails between her and the property manager where she explicitly acknowledged the distinction, but chose to file the complaint anyway. That became part of the public record. I attached the vendor report and the audit findings to a demand letter. I sent it to the board, the management company, and the association's attorney. I demanded a written settlement agreement acknowledging the wrongful fines, the unlawful lockout, and the retaliation. I also demanded reimbursement for my attorney fees and compensation for the time I lost from work dealing with the chaos. The association settled within 2 weeks. I got a check for $3,000 and a formal written apology on association letterhead. Karen's own selective enforcement got documented in the minutes. Every meeting for the next 6 months included a standing agenda item, reviewing compliance filings to ensure fairness. Janice stopped coming to meetings. She sold her house 4 months later and moved out of the neighborhood. I heard she tried to join the board of her new HOA and was quietly rejected after someone ran a background check and found the Mesa Verde audit. The final showdown happened at the grocery store parking lot nearby. I was loading groceries into my car when Janice pulled into the spot next to me. She got out and walked over. She said I had ruined her reputation and cost her thousands in legal fees. I said she had done that to herself. She said the board had no right to publicize the audit. I said the audit was a public record under Texas law, and that she should have thought about that before filing fake complaints. She raised her voice and said I was a liar and a troublemaker. I stayed calm. I said everything I reported was true, and that if she had a problem with it, she could take me to court. A woman loading groceries 2 cars over heard the yelling and stopped. She recognized Janice. She walked over and said she was one of the residents who had received a fake violation notice. She thanked me for exposing the pattern. Janice turned and walked away without another word. That was the last time I saw her. The new policy worked. The following winter, the association hired a neutral third-party inspector to verify all snow removal complaints. Fines dropped by 80%. Residents started showing up to board meetings again. Marcus ran for a board seat and won. He pushed through additional reforms, including a rule that board members could not file complaints without a co-sponsor, and that all complaint evidence had to be submitted through the management company portal with timestamps and witness corroboration. I kept the binder. I kept the settlement check stub. I kept the red stamped envelopes as a reminder. And I kept the doorbell footage backed up in 3 places. The plow marker stake stayed in that snowbank until spring. When the snow melted, I pulled it out and threw it away. It felt like closing a chapter. My job stabilized. I stopped missing client calls. My boss stopped asking if everything was okay. I even got a promotion 6 months later. The chaos had cost me sleep, time, and energy, but in the end, I won. The HOA adopted a clear winter policy with neutral proof standards and a real appeal process. That was the outcome. That was what mattered. Mesa Verde Village Association is still there. The gate still opens when I punch in my code. The pool still operates in the summer. But the culture changed. Residents know they have rights. They know they can push back. And they know that someone like Janice, someone who abuses the system for personal vendettas, will not last. I see Marcus at the mailbox cluster sometimes. We talk about the old days, the red-stamped envelopes, the fake rules, the tow truck showdown. He laughs and says I should write it all down. I tell him I already did. It is all in the binder, every page, every photo, every receipt. A city inspector confirming what the HOA cannot enforce. A property manager disciplined for enabling abuse. Karen's own selective enforcement documented in the minutes. And a neighborhood that finally learned to hold its leaders accountable. That is the story. That is how I survived the winter the HOA tried to bury me. Take care, and I will see you next time.